What's up, everyone? George Soto here, co-founder at AssetMule. Thank you so much for joining us for our AssetMule weekly office hours. If you've been here before, you know the drill. We goof off, we talk about use cases, we show you product, we answer questions, and have a lot of fun doing so. Sometimes my dog will jump in, so if you do see little Arthur jump in, maybe give him a wave. By the way, everyone out there watching would love to know where you're tuning in from. I know that's something that people ask on these kinds of things. I just thought to ourselves, or to myself rather, I was like, you know what? Maybe it'd be cool to see where people are tuning in from, and see where our loyal attendees are around the world. I am in Miami, Florida, joined by my co-founder and CEO Justin Dorfman. Justin, I know you've been traveling a little bit. We were in Colorado and we did one of these. Now you're in New York. You were in Italy before, so it's great to see you kind of traveling around and being able to live this dream, right? So you've
Yeah,
been
I
doing.
don't really know where I am right now
All right.
from like a sleeping standpoint and so on. So traveling with little kids,
Yes. Well,
jet lag, all that good stuff.
yeah, well, you are adaptive too. So, for the folks out there, today we're going to focus on teaching how to enable your sales team to personalize assets while staying on brand, right? I've had the pleasure of speaking to hundreds of product marketers over the last 14 or so months. And one thing that is really, really clear in my mind is product marketing is doing all this incredible work developing positioning statements and videos and all these assets, right? And one of the downsides of what I call the old world is the fact that we don't want sales to go and butcher those things. We want sales to be able to use this research backed, super detailed and super well thought out in stuff that we're building in their assets and follow ups and talk tracks and so on and so forth. And so that is a core issue, right? And then on the other side, as sales reps, we need to personalize our message. I know you've heard me talk about it before. We get off calls as a salesperson, right? And have all this context because we've done discovery, et cetera, et cetera. We write a follow up email or send a message, and it's very, very personalized, yet we're stuck in the old world with these very generic sales assets. Today, we're going to show you how to use AssetMule to not only have all those beautiful elements and assets as a product marketer that you've created in the system that allows you to now align or collaborate with sales in a better way, but as a sales rep, how you would use AssetMule, of course we're biased here, how you would use AssetMule to do that last mile personalization. So if you do have any questions, go ahead and comment. You're probably watching this on LinkedIn or YouTube. Put in a comment, ask a question. If you have feedback, if you don't like my shirt today, it's kind of a cool shirt. My wife buys me these like polo shirts. She likes that. She doesn't like my style otherwise. No, I'm just kidding. I'm half kidding. In any case, if you do have any questions, comments, feedback, etc., want us to speak to something, do comment. Without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Justin.
Awesome. Cool. I'm super excited about this because this was actually the original use case or pain point that we built AssetMule for. And now we've kind of expanded that. AssetMule focuses on creating these beautiful assets very easily and quickly. And we also have the interactivity and the trackability of these assets. But this idea of enabling sales to personalize assets while staying on brand was the original pain point that I experienced myself, right? And I've been on both sides of the coin as a salesperson, going rogue and creating my own assets. And then as a product marketer, wishing I didn't do that because now my sales reps were doing it too. In my experience, there's sort of traditionally three options that we have as product marketers when sales wants to personalize assets. One is not to let them do it, right? To lock these assets as PDFs. And what we end up seeing in that case is they don't use the assets, right? And they end up going rogue and creating their own stuff. The other option is to leave the assets open for editing. And in that case, what we end up seeing is all kinds of crazy Frankenstein assets that get created, and the messaging, as George mentioned, being all over the place. Sometimes messaging that's not approved, and especially in regulated industries, can be a much bigger risk than just off-brand, right? It can be a legal risk. And then the third option is for the product marketer to say, you know what, I'll help you personalize all your assets to every one of the sales reps, which is impossible, right? Usually product marketing teams are relatively small in this day and age. There's a lot of solo product marketers, and it just becomes overwhelming. And that's where product marketers start to feel like they're tactical order takers when they're just being asked constantly to create or adapt assets. So really with AssetMule, our vision was to create a way for sales and product marketing to have their cake and eat it too, right? Allow sales to personalize the assets and allow for those assets to stay on brand, on message. And today we'll walk through two key features that enable that. The first are snippets, this library of messaging and positioning and imagery that product marketers can save in a library that sales can swap in and out of these templates to personalize them. And the second set of features are editing permissions. So in a very granular way in a template, to be able to say, this is what the salesperson can adapt, and this is how they can adapt it, right? Rather than just completely locking down a PDF or completely leaving an asset open for editing. So let's dive in and take a look at these different things. And I'm going to share my screen here. And George, as usual, if you can just let me know if you can see my screen. Yep. No? You might be on mute.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Cool. So the template that I'm going to use for this example is actually our one-pager here at AssetMule, our interactive one-pager. And I'll start by talking about this concept of snippets. And I'm going to start from actually the product marketer's workflow. And then I'll go into the sales workflow and show how it looks from the other side. But as I mentioned earlier, in AssetMule, there's this concept of snippets, which is essentially saving micro bits of content from your templates in a library so that the sales team can have multiple options to choose from. These micro bits of content can be value statements. They can be interactive product demos like you see here. They can be different strings of customer logos, different product images, or feature statements, or they can be quotes, right? And as you're building your templates in AssetMule as a product marketer, again, you can save these bits of content into a snippet library and save multiple versions. So for instance, I have this quote here, and if I want to save this in my snippet library, all I have to do is click on this is the component settings. So it relates to this component, the quote component within this section. And by doing that, now you'll see this section, the snippet section. And as long as I have some content in here that I've populated into my template, I can navigate over to the Save tab. And now I can give this snippet a name. It could be, quote, the person's name, the company, and so on. And then I can also add some tags here. Maybe the tag is the industry that person that we have the quote from is in, or maybe it's their persona or the use case that they're talking about. And you can apply multiple tags here. And then when you do that and you save the snippet, it then becomes part of that snippet library that you can access, and all those tags that you can filter from, right? I can filter by product marketers, or I can filter by a particular company, a customer, or I can see all my snippets here. And again, this will then become available for the salesperson when they want to personalize the asset so that they can choose the snippet that they want to use and swap into the asset. So that's doing it from the template itself. But I also wanted to point out that as you save these snippets, there's a section within AssetMule, a tab, the snippet tab, where you can also then access all your snippets from here. You can organize them in different ways, and you can also create snippets from here as well, in addition to creating them from the template. So you'll see here all our snippets. I can filter by the type of snippet, for instance, those quotes, or maybe product images. Let me find that here. And then again, I can filter by team member. I can filter by those tags. And as I mentioned, I can also create snippets from here, as well as saving them from within the templates as I'm building them. All I have to do is, in this case, choose the quote snippet. Again, add the content in here, give it a name, add some tags, and then save it. And then it becomes part of that snippet library. And again, that snippet will then be available for that particular component. Again, the quote one here when I've saved it. So that's the first set of features that really enables this personalization, but with pre-approved messaging that I'll show you again from the sales standpoint. But before we go into that, I want to talk about the second feature that really enables this use case, and that's editing permissions and deciding the level of editing that a salesperson can have, not only on the template as a whole, but component by component. So there's really 3 levels of permissions when it comes to editing. And again, this is at the component level. So I'll start by looking at this, what we call the personalized logo component, which is this logo for logo sort of setup. And as you'll see here, when I click on that component settings and pull that up, you'll see here that I've actually left this completely open for editing. And the reason I've done that is I want my sales rep to be able to add their prospect's logo here. So I don't want to lock it at all. I want to keep that completely open. So that's the first level of permissions that you can set here. The second level of permissions is what I actually like to use in the quotes component pretty frequently. And that is locking editing, but leaving the snippet swapping open. So leaving that snippet library open. Editing is locked, so they can't just write a quote in there. And again, you'll see how this looks in a second from the sales perspective, but leaving snippets unlocked so that they can choose from that library of snippets and pull in a pre-approved quote to use in here. So that's the second level of permissions. And then the third level of permissions is completely locking it down. And for things like value statements or feature descriptions or things like that, I like to use that full locking where I've locked editing. I've also locked snippet swapping. And that means that this value statement here, create interactive sales assets in minutes, and the subheader here, that is what it's going to be. They can't change that. They can't edit that component. They can't swap in a different snippet. That's what it will be. So again, those 3 levels of keeping it completely unlocked, locking the editing, but leaving the snippet library open for swapping in different snippets, or completely locking down the components and it being that in the asset. So let's now look at what this looks like from the salesperson's perspective. Let's say I'm the salesperson and I now want to create an asset using that template. I would go in here, probably in the team tab of the template section, and I would click create asset. And let's start actually by looking at those permissions that I just walked you through. You'll see here, we left this completely open, right? So I can actually click in here and I can add my prospect's logo just by putting in their URL here and choosing the logo that I want to use. I can also upload a logo if I wanted, but this looks like a pretty good logo to use. And again, because the product marketer in this case left that open, completely open for editing, I was able to do that. The second level of permission, as we talked about, was the quote here, right? And again, you'll see I can't edit this because we locked the quote down, but I can edit it by accessing the snippet library, right? And seeing all those snippets that we populated and saved in the library, whether we did it from the template or we did it from the snippet page, and all the tags. And again, if I want to sort of choose a different snippet to pull in here as a sales rep, I can do that and just pull in the most appropriate snippet. And then the third level of editing, as I mentioned, is completely locking it down. As you see here, we can't edit this value statement. We can't access snippets. It's locked and it is what it is. Now, I noticed one other area that I want to, that was left open for me to personalize. And again, that's just putting in the prospect's name. But now you've seen how a salesperson very quickly and easily can add the logo of the prospect, swap in maybe a different quote, and personalize this asset for that particular prospect, but with guardrails that the product marketer has set so that the messaging and everything is on point, on brand, on message. And there's the have your cake and eat it too moment here that I was mentioning before. So that's really how it works in terms of enabling sales reps to personalize assets while staying on brand and on message. And again, the core features here are the snippets that the product marketer can populate into the library, create different versions of quotes or videos or images or even interactive demos. And then the second set of features are the permission settings, where the product marketer can lock certain areas in different ways, keep some components open for editing, keep some locked but with the ability to swap in snippets, and keep others completely locked, really enabling for the sales rep to personalize the asset, but in a controlled way that allows or ensures that everything is on brand and on message when they're ready to go ahead and save that template or save that asset, share it with a prospect, and go ahead and engage that prospect with personalized content. So I'm going to pause here and see if we have any questions on this use case and on.
Awesome. And while we're waiting for Justin to get back online, a couple things that I wanted to point out. The first thing is that, and Justin, I was just speaking to a couple things that I wanted to point out. The first thing is alignment, right? Like, anybody within a go-to-market team knows that sales and marketing alignment is a huge issue. It continues to be, and we have to fix it, because the best organizations are aligned. The best sales and marketing organizations or go-to-market organizations, the fact that we even have a team or a title now to a team effort called go-to-market tells you that alignment is key, right? And we've seen that pop up over the last couple of years. 10 years ago, 5 years ago, go-to-market was not a thing in the same way that it is today. It wasn't spoken to in the same way. This, I believe, is a result of the criticality, I think that's a word, right, Justin? Of alignment.
It is now.
It is now. It is a huge and critical component to a successful go-to-market team, sales, marketing, customer success team, right? So we are specifically speaking to that part in the process, in the go-to-market motion, around, as you know, around the alignment between product marketers, or those marketers supporting sales with sales assets, sales collateral, and sales. And as we talked about at the beginning of this session, if you do not have the ability to personalize something, it is not going to reach its full potential, and it could, like it always does, and it happens all the time, not work, period, right? Hands down. Like, we want personalized experience. Yes, you can walk into a grocery store, convenience store, clothing store is a great one, right? And someone, we were just talking with a great product marketing voice out there recently, and he was using the department store analogy, where you can walk in, the salesperson look at you and go, boy, I think that you're going to like these. Imagine that experience, that personalized experience based on who you are, maybe the way you're dressing up, things like that, whatever their training is, to understand their ability to actually point you into an area that is going to resonate and really speak to your preferences. It's just I don't know anyone that can argue that that's not a better experience. So point is, we all know that personalization and relevancy is really, really key, but that only happens in a scalable, effective way with this type of alignment. And this is the core behind what we're doing here, right? And to Justin's point early on, this has always been the core thesis that we had, that this was important, and the mission behind the product from day one. So it's great that after speaking to hundreds upon hundreds of go-to-market professionals out there, product marketers, sales reps, sales leaders, etc., we see that we weren't alone in our own experiences, and that it's out there, and we're dedicated to solving this. So thank you so much for
George, just one thing on that point.
Yes.
Just one more thing on that point, since we have some extra time here. I think the moment where we realized that this was a big pain point, besides hearing from uh, hundreds of product marketers, even before we did, right? I think for me, it was this Forrester research report
Mm,
that we saw, right, where I was blown away to find that um, companies spend up to $17 million a year on sales collateral, right? And only 17% or something like that of that content ever gets used, right? The rest of it never gets used. Think about the
yeah.
amount of waste, both in terms of that budget, but those product marketers that put their heart and soul into those assets and they never get used, right? Um, it just blew my mind. But was even more interesting about this report were the reasons why, right? And there were two reasons why. They were almost equal in 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 percentage, but one was slightly ahead, right? The second reason is probably the one that we actually hear more, but it turned out it was the second reason, which was sales didn't know where to find these assets, right? And as I mentioned before, that's a problem that I think many companies have tried to solve for many years, right? There are sales enablement solutions that have built massive businesses, Highspot, Seismic, Showpad, around this use case of being sort of the central system of record of all your sales assets that are more easily discoverable because of search and tagging and all kinds of things, and even some instruction on how to use those assets and where to use them. But this issue still persists, even though those systems exist. And the reason is that that's not the number one reason why assets aren't getting used. The number one reason is that salespeople feel like those assets are not relevant for their buyers, right? These are generic one-pagers, generic decks that have minimal personalization and that they just don't feel is the right asset to send their customer, right?
Mm.
It doesn't speak to their pain points, their needs, to their persona, to their use case, for whatever reason, right? And that's what I think really was the aha moment for me, and really the vision behind building what we just walked through today. Now what we're actually doing is making it so that a salesperson can actually personalize the asset for each one of their prospects, right? By pulling in the right quotes that speak to that persona or their industry or their use case, pulling in their logos, pulling in the right product videos, pulling in the right images, but also addressing the other side of the equation, which is the product marketer needing to ensure that everything that the salesperson is sharing looks good, is on message, and is also approved from a legal and compliance standpoint, right? And now our hope, and what we're starting to see early signs of, is that these assets actually get used, right? And that there's alignment between product marketing and sales. Because previously, when sales wasn't using the assets, there was a lot of finger pointing and blaming, right? It was the product marketers saying sales never uses the assets. We put all this time and energy into it and they just don't use them. They ask for these assets and they don't use them. And then sales saying, yeah, because the assets that you're giving us aren't good or they're not relevant and so on. And now what we're doing is we're actually creating a bridge between these two teams so that sales is getting the assets that they need and that product marketing is actually seeing those assets and the snippets and the micro bits of content that they're putting together being used by the sales team. And now we can all, celebrate this partnership as a go-to-market team, as one group, bringing these assets to market. So I know that's a little bit of my soapbox here, but I just wanted to go back to that stat because I think that was, for me, the real aha moment, that there was something here worth solving and that has continued to be sort of the guiding North Star to what we're building here.
Well, I have a question for you, Justin. How much of that $17 million, right, the average organization in investment into these sales assets or collateral, how much of that collateral or those sales assets were actually done in partnership with sales?
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know
probably
if
very little, right?
yeah, and that is critical. I
Yeah.
mean, I was actually speaking to Mark Young, who's a great B2B marketer. Shout out to Mark. He was on our show earlier today, our podcast, the Go to Market or the GTM pack. And he was saying that one of the biggest problems with marketing organizations, and he's been a VP of marketing at Nextiva, Dooley, tons of really great B2B brands. And he was like, the thing is that we go into our silos. We're given a pipeline number or lead count or a mixture of all these things. And we go in our silos and we do all this stuff. And it's disconnected from reality, which is, or I should say it's a partial reality, right? Because all the stuff that we do as marketers is great, right? It's valuable, but it's only half of the story. It's only using the information and context that we have based on our resources and access, which is fine. But we have to, if we're going to really tell an effective story, there's no way that you can't collaborate, listen, and use the information that sales is being able to provide here. They're on the front lines on a daily basis, and correlate that or cross-reference that or triangulate that with the data that you have, right? I mean, that's just a basic math, right? Like you can see why that's powerful. So at its core, our platform is really, really helping to be able to co-create these assets, right? So I kept thinking about this, dude, when you were talking about it. I was like, boy, are we a sales asset slash collateral co-creation platform that really brings together sales and marketing ways that we've been really, really needing over time. It's an interesting thought. Awesome.
Very
well,
cool.
Folks, I know we're wrapping up here today. If you do have any questions here as we wrap up, go ahead and comment on the comment wall. If maybe you are watching this after the fact, that's okay too. Go ahead and comment and we'll get to your questions. If you have not signed up to AssetMule yet, go ahead and do so. Go to AssetMule.ai. You can sign up for free. No strings attached, no credit card, nothing. You can go kick the tires on it, have access to everything that is available in the platform to see if it's something that would be valuable to you and your go-to-market organization. If you're not following us on LinkedIn or YouTube, go ahead and click on that follow button or that subscribe button if you're on on YouTube. And we are constantly sharing content, so we are focused on really providing value and insights and helping all of you go-to-market professionals out there. We have a sweet spot for product marketing and sales folks, of course, given our background. But without further ado, have a wonderful, wonderful day, everyone.